Alright, so today I'm going to talk a little bit about how to balance a telescope on an equatorial mount. Um, what I have here is I have a 4-inch refractor which has been attached to this mount and which has been attached to this tripod which has been leveled. So, sometimes you go out and you're at an observing session, you're putting up your telescope, and it'll be out of balance. So here you can see that it kind of just wants to flop around, kind of go wherever. It doesn't hold its position very well. So we want to go ahead and try to make sure that that doesn't happen. And before I get started on that, I want to talk a little bit about this equatorial mount here, or sometimes called a German equatorial mount. Really simple design. It's got two axes of motion. It's got what's called a polar or right ascension axis right here, and then it's also got an axis right here which is called the declination. This design has been around for almost 200 years now. It's very tried and true. It's great for small telescopes, large telescopes, and big observatories. They use these type of mounts as well. A couple advantages. When you do something called a polar alignment, in other words, this right ascension axis is facing north or pointed at the North Star, it sets it up so that it becomes the telescope becomes parallel to the Earth's rotation. Okay, so the advantage there is that you can actually track objects without them having drifting across the field of view. So if you sit outside on a starry night and you're looking at the stars, you can see they're moving. And if you have a telescope that's not correcting for that, and you look through the eyepiece, you'll notice that objects kind of move across the field of view. So by setting it up so that this axis is parallel to the axis, or the rotational axis of the Earth, you can actually attach a motor here, sometimes called a clock as well. It'll actually compensate for that motion. Okay, so you can keep an object in the eyepiece, all night long. Another advantage here is that it's got what's called setting circles. So these are little numbered circles here and here. So one is for declination and one is for actually right ascension and declination. So that's kind of analogous to latitude and longitude here on the Earth. So if you're trying to find an object in the night sky, you can use declination and right ascension. But in order for this design to work effectively, it has to have a nice balanced tube assembly on it. So you can see this one is not very well balanced. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to first put this tube parallel to the right ascension, and they have these locking knobs on here where you can actually lock the motion. So what I've done is I've locked the motion, the right ascension axis, so all that's free now is the tube itself. And you can see it's pretty much drifting on its own. So what I'm going to do is loosen these knobs. This is for the rings here. And before I did any of that, I took off all the lens caps, put on my finder scopes. I set it up like I'm going to use it for observing. And that even includes the focus here. So, as you move this draw tube in and out, it can actually change the balance as well. So what I'm going to do, loosen those. So now the telescope can move inside these tubes. And I'm just kind of balancing it by feel. Just trying to get an idea where it's at. Okay. This seems pretty good there. I'm going to tighten those up. Okay, bring it back to the position like this. Tighten it up here, and then loosen this one here. So now I just have the motion like that. And you can again see there's quite a bit of imbalance here. So what I'm going to do is just adjust this counterweight. Again, do it by feel. And tighten it up. Okay. Now when I loosen these locking knobs, you can see the telescope will pretty much go to any position in the sky and retain that position. So now it's in a balanced state. Okay. You can also see how easy it is to move as well. So I just want to give a few caveats as well. The first point is, set it up like you're going to use it for viewing. So if you're adding a camera or you're changing eyepieces, heavier or lighter eyepieces, you definitely want to rebalance it. The other one is make sure you know which knobs you're loosening and tightening. So these, you loosen these rings so the telescope tube can move in and out. But on the other side, we have this knob. This knob actually attaches the telescope to the mount. So if I loosen this, the telescope could actually fall down and fall off the mount and create some damage. Fortunately, there's a locking screw here, but just kind of pay attention a little bit to what you're doing. And same with this counterweight here. Here it has a safety stop, so this won't slide off. But if you don't have that safety stop and this counterweight comes loose and just slides off, the telescope will just careen right into the tripod, and of course the weight could fall on your foot, and not a good situation. So just a few little pointers, but once you get it set up, it works great. You can pretty much find anything in the sky with it. Sometimes you get awkward viewing angles, but generally speaking, really great design. Tried and proven for a long time. A lot of the big scopes in the world, research type scopes, use the same type of mount. Telescopes weighing thousands of pounds, measured in tons, benefit from the same principle of balance as with this scope here. So that's pretty much it. That's the basics of it. There are some more advanced techniques if you're doing astrophotography, some ideas of imbalancing the scope to correct for some, gear backlash and stuff like that. But just for observing, just to get started, this is a good way to balance your scope. Okay, happy observing and clear skies.